Welcome to Lecture 15, Foreign Policy of Kenya. Introduction. In previous lectures, we examined foreign policy of Nigeria. In this lecture, we shall examine the foreign policy of Kenya. Objectives. At the end of the lecture, you should be able to explain the importance of Kenya on the African continent, identify the key areas of Kenya's national interest, describe Kenya's relationship with countries around the world. Content. Kenya is a country in Eastern Africa bordered by Ethiopia to the north, Somalia to the east, Tanzania to the south, Uganda to the west, and Sudan to the northwest, with the Indian Ocean running along the southeast border. Nairobi is the country's capital and largest city. The country gained independence from Britain in 1963. Founding president and liberation struggle icon Jomo Kenyatta led Kenya from independence in 1963 until his death in 1978, when President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi took power in a constitutional succession. The country was a de facto one-party state from 1969 until 1982, when the ruling Kenya African National Union (KANU) made itself the sole legal party in Kenya. Moi acceded to internal and external pressure for political liberalization in late 1991. The ethnically fractured opposition failed to dislodge KANU from power in elections in 1992 and 1997, which were marred by violence and fraud, but were viewed as having generally reflected the will of the Kenyan people. President Moi stepped down in December 2002 following fair and peaceful elections. Mwai Kibaki, running as a candidate of the multi-ethnic United Opposition Group, the National Rainbow Coalition (NAC), defeated KANU candidate Uhuru Kenyatta and assumed the presidency following a campaign centered on an anti-corruption platform. Kibaki's NAC coalition splintered in 2005 over a constitutional review process. Government de factos joined with KANU to form a new opposition coalition, the Orange Democratic Movement (ODM), which defeated the government's draft constitution in a popular referendum in November 2005. Kibaki's re-election in December 2007 brought charges of vote rigging from ODM candidate Raila Odinga and unleashed 2 months of violence in which as many as 1,500 people died. UN-sponsored talks in late February produced a power-sharing accord, bringing Odinga into the government in the restored position of Prime Minister. Kenya in August 2010 adopted a new constitution that eliminates the role of Prime Minister after the next presidential election. Kenya is a very important country in Africa. Kenya boasts the largest, most diversified economy in the East Africa region, and its location as a transport hub amplifies its importance for much of the continent. An article in the Los Angeles Times, 4th December 2008, Dark Days in Kenya, included some facts of why Kenya is a vital country. Kenya has emerged as one of Africa's leaders, playing a prominent role in resolving conflicts in Sudan and Somalia. The country's ports also serve as conduits for commerce and aid across East Africa. World Food Programme shipments destined for neighboring Somalia start in Mombasa. Nearly all of Kenya's neighbors rely on its ports, highways and logistics networks for delivery of goods and access to international markets. The US has come to view Kenya as a key partner in its anti-terrorism programs in the Horn of Africa. It receives about $1 billion a year in aid from Washington, has worked closely with US intelligence agencies to develop an anti-terrorism police unit that attempts to block extremists, particularly from Somalia, from spreading through East Africa. One other important thing you must note is that the current president of the United States of America, Barack Obama, is from Kenya. Kenya's foreign policy. The conduct of foreign policy in Kenya is a prerogative of the head of state, that is, the president. These powers are vested in the presidency by Section 16 of the Constitution of Kenya, Amendment Act No. 28 in Section 23 of Constitution. Consequently, the chief executive is the initiator, articulator, and director of foreign policy. This applies universally and is not unique to Kenya. The Foreign Ministry's responsibility is that of advice and execution in consultation with the presidency. Several individuals, institutions, and organizations participate in the foreign policy formulation and decision-making. From this perspective, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is only a facilitator, coordinator, and a steward of the country's foreign policy. The various government agencies are complementary actors in the conduct of foreign policy. Since independence, Kenya's foreign policy has been designed and guided by the following basic and universally recognized norms: respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity of other states, and preservation of national security; good neighborliness and peaceful coexistence; peaceful settlement of disputes; non-interference in the internal affairs of other states; non-alignment and national self-interest; adherence to the charters of the UN and OAU. Factors influencing Kenya's foreign policy. Kenya's foreign policy has since independence been guided and shaped by its own national interests. This self-interest could be grouped into three main categories: security, political. Peace and stability are a prerequisite to social and economic development. The government's commitment to guarantee the security of its people and the preservation of national integrity and sovereignty within secure borders underlies the desire to advance national interests by guaranteeing a secure political environment for development. Economic advancement or development. Economic development has played a dominant role in shaping Kenya's foreign policy. The need to pursue an open economic policy and the demand for foreign capital and investment flows has influenced Kenya's approach to foreign policy. Kenya and regional integration. International and regional cooperation form a major component of the foreign policy of any country. Kenya participates actively in several regional initiatives. She is a member of East African Community, Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, ACP-EU, Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, Indian Ocean Rim Association for Regional Cooperation, among others. This cooperation is born out of the realization that the development and prosperity of Kenya are ultimately tied with our neighbors in the region. With the advent of globalization and liberalization, the country's external relations are being governed more and more by the need to promote a favorable environment for trade and investment. Common markets for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA. Kenya attaches great significance to the common markets for Eastern and Southern Africa as it provides a market for its manufactured products. The COMESA region is a vibrant economic area, and membership to the Free Trade Area (FTA) launched in October 2000 is expected to boost trade and investment. COMESA is a leading destination of Kenya's exports, constituting over 40% of the total exports. East African Community. The revival of East African Community with a potential market of 83 million people will contribute towards building a competitive market and conducive environment for the flow of investment to the region. Membership to the EAC will enhance political cohesion and stability among neighboring states and thereby contribute to sustainable development of the region. Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD. Kenya is a member of IGAD, comprising of the 7 countries of the Horn of Africa. The Horn of Africa suffers from the perennial problem of drought, and IGAD has concerted energies in addressing the issue of drought and development. In 1996, IGAD was revitalized and its mandate expanded to address issues of conflict and development. Under the IGAD arrangement, Kenya has played a mediating role in the conflicts of Southern Sudan and Somalia. Kenya's role in this effort has gained international recognition and prestige. New Partnership for Africa's Development. Kenya supports the New Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD, which is a holistic and integrated framework for the sustainable development of the African continent. It is widely recognized that Kenya's invaluable experience in socio-economic and development processes will be useful in constructing the new partnership. To this end, Kenya has participated in all major summits and conferences on NEPAD and looks forward to play a major role in the implementation committee which it seeks to join. Since then, the two groups have had an uninterrupted cooperation through successive Lomé conventions, Lomé I, III, and Lomé IV. Cooperation between ACP and EU aims at the gradual and smooth integration of ACP countries into the global economy. Under trade development, ACP countries have enjoyed preferential market access of their products to the EU. About 33% of Kenya's exports, for instance, find their destination to the EU market. The EU accounts for 90% of Kenya's horticulture. The country has also benefited from the Stabilization of Export Earnings (SABEX) facility. Lomé IV Convention expired in February 2000 and was replaced by the Cotonou Partnership Agreement, which was signed on 23 June 2002 in Cotonou, Benin. Unlike the new agreement, discriminates between least developed countries (LDCs) and non-LDCs. Countries classified as LDCs will enjoy preferential market access to the EU market for all their exports except arms up to the year 2020, while non-LCDs will only enjoy preferential market access up to the year 2008, after which they will enter into WTO-compatible trade agreements with EU. Negotiations for the new Economic Partnership Agreement were launched on 27 September 2002. Kenya and multilateralism. Kenya supports multilateralism through the United Nations system. Kenya has always preferred a multilateral approach in confronting problems in the international stage and fully subscribes to the charters of the United Nations, and the OAU African Union seeks to work with like-minded states in the promotion of a new international political and economic order. This is based on a strong conviction that the multidimensional problem of affecting mankind today has to be tackled through a global undertaking. Toward this end, Kenya will continue to undertake its responsibilities in the context of the UN system, World Trade Organization, IMF, World Bank and other multilateral bodies. Kenya and the Commonwealth. Kenya is a member of the Commonwealth, a voluntary association of 54 independent states, comprising about 1/4 of the world population. Members of the Commonwealth, mainly former British colonies, dependencies and other territories, subscribe to the ideals of the Declaration. Kenya and OAU AU. Kenya subscribes to the Charter of OAU AU and has been an active member since joining in 1964. President Daniel Arap Moi was elected as chairman of the organization in 1991 and served for an unprecedented 2-year term. Since then, Kenya has remained at the forefront of regional conflict resolution initiatives in Africa. Kenya has also actively participated in the transformation of OAU to the African Union, and President Moi was among the heads of state and government who attended the inauguration in July 2002 in Durban, South Africa. Relations with immediate neighbors. Despite internal tensions in Sudan and Ethiopia, Kenya has maintained good relationships with them. Relations with Uganda and Tanzania are strengthening as the three countries work for mutual economic benefit. Kenya has hosted and played an active role in the negotiations to resolve the civil war in Sudan and to reinstate a central government authority in Somalia. On January 9, 2005, a Sudan North-South Comprehensive Peace Accord was signed in Nairobi. In July 2011, South Sudan became an independent state. Negotiations in the Somali National Reconciliation Conference resulted at the end of 2004 in the establishment of Somali Transitional Federal Institutions, Assembly, President, Prime Minister and Government until early 2005. Kenya served as a major host for these institutions. Between May and June 2005, members of the Somalia Transitional Federal Institutions relocated to Somalia. Kenya is host to more than 550,000 refugees, most of who are from Somalia. Kenya's most significant ally in the West is Great Britain. The two nations have maintained uninterrupted friendly relations since independence. Britain remains Kenya's principal trading partner, its chief source of economic and military assistance, and its major provider of private investment capital. The British government has traditionally practiced quiet diplomacy with Kenya, a policy it considers to bring about the greatest influence on Kenya. Kenya joined the United Nations at independence in 1963 and is presently a member of the 15 UN organizations and 22 other international organizations. Summary: Kenya is a very important country in Africa. Kenya boasts the largest, most diversified economy in the East African region, and its location as a transport hub amplifies its importance for much of the African continent. Kenya's foreign policy has since independence been guided and shaped by its own national interest. This national interest can be grouped into three: security, political, economic advancement or development, geopolitical factors. End of lecture 15. Thanks for listening.